We are pleased to introduce Dan Assisi, who will share his reflections on the future of the consciousness, challenge, growth, and brighter future. Dan Assisi is an author of the international speaker who has shared insights of spirituality in over 60 cities across 4 continents, known for combining depth with humor. Dan offers a thoughtful approach that reminds audience of their spiritual nature. He's a founding member of the Spiritist Institute and the California Spirits Association and hosts the Spiritist Conversation podcast. Welcome, Dan.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing? It is great to be here again and see all of you. It really is. So let's dive in, shall we? We've spent the whole day together talking about many different things, and I want to take you to Anza Borrego Desert. You may not have heard of it, but the Anza Borrego Desert National Park. It is the third largest national park in the country. It is the largest national park in California. It is huge. It's in Southern California. And it looks like this. It looks like a desert because that's what it is. It's 500 miles of dusty roads, 650,000 acres of desert. But you might be asking, then why are we talking about deserts when we are really meaning to talk about the evolution of consciousness? Well, because there is something magical about Anza Borrego Desert every once in a while that really ought to capture our attention. It is the super bloom. When the conditions are right, when there is a good amount of rain in the winter and the temperature in the spring is warm enough to awaken the seeds that lie dormant in the desert, this is a multitude of flowers blossom. And I wonder if there isn't a lesson for us there. Maybe we can make our own parable, the Anza Borrego Desert National Park parable. Maybe that's not a good name. Maybe we should know. How about the super bloom of consciousness? Right? Are there lessons that we can take with the knowledge that we have that we can apply to this incredible phenomena so that we can go from this, our consciousness today that perhaps is devoid of flowers, and the world that is also very arid, to this, where our internal consciousness gets to bloom in all its majesty, and the world that we live in also benefits from all this beauty? Can we tap then into our super bloom of consciousness and learn some lessons with, I say with, the incredible wisdom that Spiritism brings us? Clearly, I am biased. Clearly. I love Spiritism because it offers a way for us to understand the world with different lenses. When we put this on, we can see things that we did not see before in our everyday life, because now we know about consciousness, reincarnation, mediumship, the interaction between the both sides of life, the immortality of the spirit, and all these tools that we have. But how can we use all of this to develop our own consciousness and live in a world that is fundamentally better than the one that we find ourselves in? That's what we try to do. And so what I propose we do is we take some minutes to talk about 5 takeaways from our super bloom of consciousness that we can apply to our daily lives. Why 5 takeaways? Well, because I was told that if you give people numbers and make lists, they pay attention. So you tell me if this is going to work. But we are going to revisit 5 things that hopefully can help us as we expand this allegory, this metaphor, this parable into our lives to make our consciousness bloom like the Anza Borrego Desert. Does that make sense? So let's dive in. The first lesson that comes to mind is that to make flowers bloom, to make our consciousness evolve, we need the right conditions. Just like it happened in Anza Borrego, what blooms depends on the conditions you create. And here's the fascinating thing about this. Depending on how much water comes that year and what temperatures in the spring, the seeds that are in the soil develop in different ways. Some seeds don't develop if there's a lot of water, others do. Some of them need water and abundant heat. So the type of flowers that you will find in a super bloom, when there is one, are the consequence of the water and the sun in different levels in different years. So that begs the question of what kind of conditions do we need to facilitate in our lives to develop the kind of flowers that we want to see in our garden of consciousness? Let's break it down. What could be the elements of a super bloom? Well, we have first, as obviously stated here, we have a temperature, the rain, the soil, and the seeds. We can draw a parallel, right? If we look at the soil and the seeds, we can say that the soil and the seeds are us. They are our experiences. We are the soil, and the seeds are our potential and our experiences in our lives that lie dormant. We can also go on and say that the sun and the temperature represent the external factors that we cannot control. How the weather is, if it's going to rain or not, how much heat. These are elements of nature. Much like we can make a bridge to this planetary transition that we're going on and the changes in the world and wars and all. These external factors, they're coming at us. They influence us. They bring heat to us, and we don't know how to deal with that. We can try to shade ourselves from it, but ultimately we cannot change those things. They are going to be there. These factors are going to come and affect us. We can't change the soil either, not at first at least. And we can change the experience and the seeds that we have there, not yet at first. We can try to bring the soil away, put new soil in. It takes time. But even if it did, it still would not make us better gardeners. So we have to learn how to change our soil. But there is one component here that we sort of can control, which is the amount of water that goes into the garden. We can equate the water to our intentions and to our efforts. How much effort and how we direct to the soil and the plants that we have. And by the way, the plants are obvious here, right? They are our consciousness, they are our habits, they are our behaviors, the things that have come from what we had in us that were exposed to external conditions and were fed by our intentions that develop in a specific way. Are you with me so far? All right. So, what other lessons can we take here, knowing that the right conditions will suscitate development of specific flowers in our lives, and therefore, by consequence, in our consciousness? Well, another piece that we can take into consideration is that good gardeners focus on what they can't control. That's because gardening is inside work. It's not outside work. What do I mean by that? It is about you knowing how you can bring change to the soil that you have. Can you change the sun? No. Can you put more water? Yes. Can you change the soil? No. So to really work on our consciousness is to understand that we cannot control the external factors to our life. We cannot change other people. We cannot change the way the world works. We cannot convince other people of our political beliefs. They can't convince us really if we don't let them. We cannot really change how our relationships work by making other people like us. We can only live through them through our own intentions and efforts. So we got to focus on that which we can control, barely, which is what? Ourselves. Our intentions and our thoughts, our will, and all these wonderful things that we have been talking about here today. That's what we can control. So that is what we ought to focus on when we're talking about expanding our consciousness. It's not about changing other people's perspective. It's not complaining about the world. It is finding out what is it that we can do to ourselves to adjust to the external factors and the conditions that we have in our lives. It's an inside job. It's not about changing the world without. It's about changing the world within. That's what makes it so. But that's what good gardeners do. And what else? What else can we learn in a short period of time where we are going to zoom to the super bloom of consciousness? Well, we're going to also learn that good gardeners must know their soil. If you don't know what soil you're working with and what lies beneath, how can you decide and help facilitate the seeds that are dormant. How are you going to grow roses if you don't know if roses are there to begin with? So we must dive into the soil. And who is the soil? What is the soil? Us. We have to get to know ourselves. We have to. That is the only way you will be able to grow that which you want. If you don't know where you're going from, you can't possibly figure out where you're going to end up at. Which ways are you going to take? And this is where Spiritism really lends itself to the task. Let's expand our model here ever so slightly. We talked about how the rain could be equated with the intention and effort that we can bring to bear to changing our consciousness. We talked about how the sun could symbolize the external factors that we cannot control, the anger in the world, the hatred, intolerance. Those things are going to be there no matter what. We talked about the experiences being our seeds in the soil. But now we can further develop our model by bringing some interesting people here. First of all, one of them is that young man, not so young there in the corner, and I placed them that so they can look at me, make sure that I'm not saying anything I shouldn't, right? So that's why they're in the corner there. But the first one is Carl Gustav Jung. And he brings us the idea of the conscious and the unconscious in a spiritual perspective, which we connect best to our understanding of reincarnation and spirit through the works of Joanna de Angelis, who takes us to the teachings that we are so familiar that were brought forth by Kardec. So when we add this to the layer, what we see is something interesting. We can now look at the soil and we can make a poetic analogy here and say what? We can say that what we can see on top of the soil is our consciousness, is what is conscious to us. We can see the flowers. We know they're there. But there are things underneath that we don't know what they are. That is our unconscious. But we need to know how to work the soil. So then, how can I possibly know what I don't know? How can I find out what is at the bottom of the soil when I don't know what's at the bottom beneath the soil? Well, if we are paying attention and if we are working through our own development and if we dedicate the intention and effort, we can find out what's under the soil by looking to what is above the soil. If you see the flowers there are in your garden today, you can surmise what seeds are underneath. And so, to give you an example, let's say that I am a bit intolerant and impatient. And as I look towards that, and I see that flower in my consciousness, I say, why is there a seed of impatience in my conscious? What experiences did I have in the past that have led to germinate this specific kind of behavior and action? I might not be able to precise it, but maybe I had experiences in the past where I was used to yielding power and people bent over what I wanted. And I felt that it was my right to just demand that of people. Maybe those seeds are in my past. But the important thing is that what I want for my future? If that is a flower of my consciousness now, what kind of intention and effort, what kind of water will I put so that those seeds don't germinate again? What kind of effort will I employ so that I can take that out of my conscious behavior and take it further? You see what I'm saying? And with Spiritism, we go farther because we know that our unconscious is also the result of our many lifetimes together. It is not just this life. So we have the ability to try to understand what is unknown so that we may better expand our perception. And when we have more information of what we have to work with, we can decide what flowers we want. Jung has a really powerful quote that we can easily apply to our lives, which is, if you don't make the unconscious conscious, it will guide your life and you will call it faith. That is to say, if you don't look into yourself and your habits and why you behave the way you behave, you will not change anything and not understand why you're given the hand that you're given, and you will think that cannot be changed. That's just how it is. But through Spiritism and reincarnation and free will and cause and consequence, we know that we can change our actions. So the more we dig into who we are and all those things that we heard here, the more we can bring that which we did not know about ourselves to the forefront of our minds. And now I know that I'm impatient. So I will be on the lookout for that. And I will choose a different way to act because I am aware of the problem. Does that make sense? So diving into who we are is a fundamental process of knowing who we want to become. Otherwise, we are just going to think that we've been dealt a bad life or bad circumstances and there's nothing we can do about it. But there are so many things we can do about it because we are an immortal spirit that is making choices every single day. And so we can begin to sow the seeds for our next day, for our next month, for our next life, to have a different garden. All it takes is that effort and that desire. And what else, as our time begins to run out, what else could we do that might be interesting and inspiring to us on our quest to populate the super bloom of our consciousness in ourselves? Well, another thing that we can learn is that gardeners tend to their gardens. Gardening or developing our consciousness is not a one-time act. It's not something that we do just in one day and then we sit and wait. It is an everyday thing. Gardeners have to sow, they have to weed, and they landscape, which means we have to employ action, constant action. We have to decide what is it that we want. We have to remove the weeds of the flowers that we no longer want. And sometimes we have to shift from one side to the next. Maybe we need some landscaping in our lives. Maybe I'm really confident professionally, but I struggle with relationship confidence. But there are lessons that I can take from what I do at work that I can move with the right amount of effort and learn from through reflection into my relationships and vice versa. Maybe that intolerance that I have can be weeded out because I no longer want that. Maybe I am ready to sow something different that has not been in my garden before. Whatever it is, we need to act on it. And so in many different ways, there's 3 steps to change. There is awareness when we dive into our soil. Then there is practice when it feels sometimes uncomfortable to do the things that we don't know yet how to do. Right? It's when we're trying to be kind, we're trying to be nice. It doesn't feel natural just yet, but that's how we practice until we develop the habit and it becomes automatic. But it takes awareness. It takes practice. It takes a habit to really have that come out. And that is tending to our garden. And that is a wonderful perspective for us to take into consideration because we need to garden. We just need to. I think that we have realized that the world we live in and the changes that we want to see are not going to come if we wait. It is important for us to tend to our gardens. What else? What else can we learn in our short time together from our super bloom of consciousness parable / allegory / metaphor / whatever the heck you want to be that might enlighten our lives? Well, one last thing here that we ought to remember too, on our list of 5, if you're counting, is that good gardeners know that the gardens can inspire. That is to say that the beauty that we create and that other creates can serve for each other. Sometimes we're so into the challenge of our gardens that we don't lift up our heads to realize that even though our consciousness has not reached the level that we desire, there are good things in there. There may be some flowers that, although small, albeit fragile, are already beautiful. Are you seeing the wonderful things that you have built over time? Are you able to stop and think about the conquests of your life? Are you able to see that in yourself? Or are you only looking at what's not working or the desert spots of your consciousness? And then there's a step further. Have you looked at the gardens beside yours to get that inspiration? Have you taken the time to be mesmerized by the beauty of the gardens of this world, of the people who have developed wonderful consciousness and can be examples for us? We talked about so many today. Of course, Paul, Mary of Magdalene, we have Gandhi, we have, in our Spiritist midst, wonderful examples like Chico Xavier, Xavier, and Divaldo Franco, who have shown by living it how to tend to their gardens and how beautiful their life can be if we do it. Are we getting inspired by that? Have we realized that there are gardens sitting next to us right now? Are you able to see the beauty of the garden next to you? Or are you just looking at the deserts? Can you look to the side, left and right, and see what's there? Are you able to see that which is beautiful in others and recognize that they are a garden in progress? Can you attend to the invitation that it is to tend to your garden? And I think that is the question here, isn't it, at the end of the day? How are you tending to the garden of your consciousness? What kind of conditions are you setting for yourselves on your daily life? What kind of focus do you have for the things that you want to change, add, prune, remove, relocate in your consciousness, in your life? How are you feeding it? How are you tending it? How are you getting inspired, and how are you inspiring? Because there is this gardener that has been speaking to us for ages and ages, the greatest spirit that has ever walked this earth, that showed us by example what it is to tend a garden that is lasting and inspiring. That with intention and desire and will and thought, directed his energies to showing us how to sow every single day of our lives so that we can find the peace and the beautiful garden that he had. So can we heed the call? Can we see the example and reinvent what it is that we want to achieve? Can we not wait for the world, but instead really just look of the world inside and decide that we can really take the helm of whatever change we want to see? Because when we work in our garden and we're truly immersed in it, it becomes a work of beauty that really inspires other people. And can you imagine what it would be like if all of us could reach inside of ourselves and spend some time developing that garden and following the footsteps of the greatest gardener of all times so that we can change our lives? What would you like to be different in your life? What kind of seeds do you want to sow? What is it that you want it to look like? Have you asked yourself those questions recently? You can do it through your own effort, through your own intention, your will, as you have been doing through many reincarnations, because you are an immortal spirit fated to be a great gardener like he was. And so that this does not become just an exercise in hypothetical gardening, examples, and symbolism, would you do me a favor? Reach under your chairs. Every single chair has something attached to it. And this could be a reminder of what is it that you can take away with you from here. These are symbolic seeds. These are symbolic seeds that you can sow in your life. Take them, exchange them, plant them, ignore them. It is up to you. But choose the flowers that you want to plant. Choose that which you want to instill in your consciousness. Choose whatever it is that you want to do and work on your soil. Focus, put your effort in, withstand the external factors, dive deep and take control of that which God has given you. And if you do, let's go make our super blooms, right?
And I leave you with this. I leave you with a simple exercise. Imagine if all of us had our super blooms. How would your day look like? Because this is the future. Imagine that you wake up in the morning refreshed and you had enough to eat, because everybody has enough to eat in the new world because we take care of each other. You step out of your bed, you greet your loved ones who are next to you. You make your way to work, which you are excited for because it is meaningful work. Along the way, you find other gardeners who are also excited to go to work. You do not feel threatened by them. You feel energized because you know what's in their hearts and they're gardening too. And you smile to each other. You get to work. You solve difficult problems. You are fulfilled by what you have. You learn new things. You return home. You find those who you love. You share your experiences. And you have a fulfilled day. And you look forward to tomorrow because you get to do it again. That is the new era. That is what's possible when we get to know who we are and understand the immortality of ourselves and the blessings of God and the gifts that we have been granted as opportunities to develop ourselves every single day. And we're not alone. So what are we waiting for? Let's go out and take everything that we learn, take the seeds that you want to play, and let's go make our super bloom. God bless you. And until we see next time.